nobody can open a conference like this without a problem. The problem here is that Adnan Amin's flight last night was cancelled. So he's still coming here. We expect him to be in the room in about 32 minutes. So you will definitely see him today. I've not heard that there is a delay, but in the program there is now a changeover, and Rainer Barke will speak first. Let me say something about him, because as you see him, and he'll speak to you if you haven't met him before. If you met him before, you know that he's a remarkable character. If you haven't met him before, you will see that in a minute. He has done so much. He has a long and accomplished career already and many more years ahead of him. He is what not everybody knows. He's a Green politician and high-level government official. I think it speaks to the competence, to the integrity, the personality and the leadership quality that he, as a Green politician, is retained as a high-level government official in what is, he's from an opposition party, not from the ruling parties. So I think it speaks to him as a person, and I think the fact that he is accepted into that position also speaks to the strength of the cross-party consensus that exists in Germany on the need and the urgency of making that energy transition work. Rainer Barke, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Andreas. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a big pleasure to welcome you all here in Germany, and we feel very proud that IRENA decided to have the first Innovation Week here in the city of Bonn. If you would have arrived in Germany 3 days ago, on Sunday, you would have become eyewitnesses of a new German record, maybe even a new world record. We have about 40 gigawatts of installed capacity of solar now here in this country, and about the same amount of capacity of wind generators. And on Sunday, we had a very sunny and at the same time also very windy day. And for the first time in the German history, we had about 95% renewables at noon in our power system. And of course, the grids were stable. This country has one of the most stable grid systems in the entire world. Our electricity supply is only interrupted less than 15 minutes a year. And I'm saying this because also in this country, experts told us 10 or 5 years ago, or even a couple years ago, that high shares of fluctuating renewables would destabilize the grids, we would experience blackouts. Well, none of that happened. I'm very much aware that in your countries you probably have the same experts who argue against high shares of renewables because of grid instability. Please send them to Germany. We can show you how that works and the grids stay stable. Ladies and gentlemen, 6 months ago in Paris we reached a global agreement to fight climate change. And I believe that one of the major reasons why this became possible was because the climate scientists had shown us that we have a budget of less than 1,000 gigatons of CO2 that we can still emit. And if we emit more, the global temperature will increase over 2 degrees Celsius, and then we're going to experience very dangerous climate change. So my understanding of the climate agreement of Paris is that we want to reduce the annual global emissions as quickly as possible so we can stretch this budget and during the course of the century decarbonize our world economy. Now the challenge that is ahead of us becomes very clear when we look at what are actually the amounts of gigatons of CO2 that we still have in the ground in the form of oil, coal, and gas. It's not 1,000 gigatons, it's about 15,000 gigatons. So to meet the target that we decided on in Paris means that of 15,000 gigatons of CO2 in form of oil, coal, and gas, we have to leave at least 14,000 gigatons in the ground. That's the implementation of the Paris Agreement. Now, I don't believe that there's any way of reaching these targets without a very clear priority on efficiency and renewables. Otherwise, it's not going to work. The targets of Paris are very much in line with what in my country was already decided quite a few years ago. We have a national consensus after many decades of very strong political debate. But now we have a consensus that we want to move away from nuclear and fossil fuels over to renewables by 2050 and thereby cut our greenhouse gases 80 to 95%. Now, if you look at, and I think Germany is a typical industrial country that we have some greenhouse gas emissions that we cannot substitute through renewables and efficiency. Those are some emissions from the industrial sector or emissions from agriculture that will fill the gap between 80 and 95% and 100%. So meeting these targets means that we have to decarbonize the power sector, decarbonize the sector of heating and cooling, and decarbonize the transport sector. And I think this is not going to be possible without efficiency first in all sectors. And I'm not talking about a little bit more efficiency, I'm talking about substantially more efficiency. And then in all sectors, we have to substitute fossil fuels through renewables. In some sectors, that's going to be difficult. For example, in the transportation sector, there's only so much biofuel we can produce and use. And also in the heating and cooling sector, yes, solar in use for heating is definitely a good option, but alone with efficiency and renewables, we're probably not going to meet the needs of houses to reach the necessary temperature in wintertime. So we are going to see sector coupling. After efficiency and the direct use of renewables, it's probably going to be the power sector that is going to produce the energy also for the transport sector and also for the sector of heating and cooling. We call that sector coupling. To say it a little bit more clearly, in the long run, we're going to drive with electricity and we're probably going to produce the rest of the heat that we need in our insulated houses also through electricity. That's good news for the power sector because it means that in spite of efficiency measurements in the power sector will most likely grow substantially, because in the power sector we know that we can produce electricity through renewable sources. We started with our support scheme for renewables in this country in the year 2000. At that time we created a feed-in tariff for renewable energies. That was the right instrument, we believe, to get these renewables off the ground. Very expensive at that time. But we, of course, are now 15 years smarter. We know which technologies work here in this country and which don't work. For example, hydro doesn't work. Biomass has worked, but we cannot expand much. Geothermal production has not really gotten off the ground. The two technologies that work in this country and are cheap now are wind and solar. They were very expensive at the beginning, but large-scale solar now, last auction we had in April of this year, average price 7 per kilowatt hour. Nobody expected that 5, and not to talk about 10 years ago, when it was almost 100 times as more expensive. And wind is about the same cost level. So the renewables are not more expensive now than conventional generators, if you look at the investment costs and look at the operational costs. The key question now is to create a new power system that can handle increasing amounts of fluctuating renewables from wind and solar, and at the same time keep the system stable, and at the same time keep the system costs low, because the system costs translate into electricity prices, and for us as a highly industrialized country, these electricity prices are of great importance, not only for public acceptance. We want to keep our industry here in this country, and that means the industry needs competitive electricity prices, that is one of the very most important objectives that we have in this energy transition. So we have reached now a level of renewables in our power system annual average of about 33%. We're moving now to 40, 50, and so on. And one of the key elements now is that we integrate the renewables into the market. The feed-in tariff we are abolishing now. We are moving to auctioning system. In the future, the politicians are going to decide on the installed capacities that they want, and then let the markets decide on the prices. That's new now. The renewables are the biggest source of electricity in our power market now. They are stronger than all the other sources. And on the other hand, of course, we have to make the market ready for renewables. We are in the big market reform now, and this is not only a debate here in Germany. We are coordinating this with our neighbors here in Europe, because we are part of the single electricity market of the EU. So I'm pretty positive that we will be succeeding. The fights and debates are always going on. Luckily, after many years, we have a national consensus about the targets. And of course, as in every democracy, there is always a debate over what is the right way to reach these targets. But I'm very hopeful that at the next Innovation Week, we will have a much higher share of 33 renewables, and the lights will stay on in Germany. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Rainer Barke, for spending the morning with us just after this remarkable record of 95% renewable in the German grid. Germany is not the only country that has high shares of renewables. There are other countries, such as Costa Rica, that are in a similar range. But it is remarkable for a heavily industrialized country to do that, that has come from a very different power mix. And I do take as an encouragement your comment that there will be another IRENA Innovation Week next year. Ladies and gentlemen, Dolph Gielen, who is Director for Innovation and Technology at IRENA, now has the difficult task to stand up on stage and look and sound like Adnan Amin. That's difficult. I don't think you need to do that. Dolph, be yourself. We look forward to your comments for the IRENA's vision on what we want to get out of this week. Dolph Gielen, thank you very much for jumping in.
Big shoes to fill, but I'll do my best. State Secretary Barke, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure to welcome you all to the first ever IRENA Innovation Week here in Bonn. As you may know, Bonn is a city of special significance for IRENA because it was here in 2009 that 75 countries came together to sign the agency's statute at our founding conference. And during the past 5 years, Bonn has also hosted the IRENA Innovation and Technology Center, and we are very grateful to the city of Bonn for all the valuable support that we have received during these years. We're also very grateful for the continuous support of the federal government of Germany for IRENA's activities. And of course, we're very delighted that State Secretary Barke is here today with us. Let me also thank all the partners and organizations that have contributed in one way or another to the organization and the success of this event. So why an Innovation Week? We've chosen this format to allow for reflection and interaction among stakeholders. In fact, it started with a set of 3 one-day workshops back-to-back, which we had, I think, in 2012. And we discovered that through that approach, we got a very different audience, because suddenly it became attractive for global experts to come to Bonn. because it was a couple of interesting events around the same, at the same time and around a specific theme. So that's why we further elaborated that concept, and the Innovation Week is the result. The scope of this Innovation Week is forward-looking. So how to accelerate the ongoing global energy transition, and how to share the race of the share of renewable energy. And we'll look at innovation from different angles across the whole technology life cycle. I think one of the issues to be clarified is what exactly is innovation? Being the director of an innovation center, that's of course a fairly fundamental question. We intend to repeat this concept of Innovation Week also in future years, and as this is the first time, we very much welcome your feedback also on the concept as we have developed it, and if you have suggestions on how to further refine that, we would very much appreciate that. So the theme of the first Innovation Week is the age of renewable power. And that concept goes back to a ministerial roundtable that took place at the IRENA's 5th assembly, that was last year, where the participants called for IRENA to bring together policymakers and practitioners in the electricity sector from different countries to share their experiences and vision. The outcome of this Innovation Week also contributes to the what is called the G20 toolkit of options to accelerate renewable energy deployment. So that is something the G20 energy ministers agreed to last year, and was endorsed by the leaders. And that toolkit has 5 components, and one of these components is exchange of best practice on enabling policy frameworks and integration of high shares of variable renewables. So the outcome of this event will also be fed into that forum. Innovation Week also coincides with the celebration of IRENA's 5th anniversary, which is for us an important milestone. And it's an important point for a rapidly growing, still young organization. 5 years is a short period for IRENA, but if you look at the change that has happened in energy, it's a very different world now. So the rate of change we're seeing in energy, and especially in the power sector, is exceptional, something we haven't seen for decades. And it was a very good time to start IRENA 5 years ago for that. Now, in terms of policy objectives, there have been some important changes in the last couple of months. First of all, the Sustainable Development Goals, UN Sustainable Development Goals, were agreed in autumn of last year. And then, of course, we have seen the Paris Agreement in December. Both have important implications for global energy transition. And for example, the Sustainable Development Goals for the first time include also a specific goal on energy, and accelerated renewable energy deployment is a part of that. So last month, the global leaders signed the Paris COP21 agreement on climate change. The implications for energy transition are, let's say, not yet fully understood by everyone. I think State Secretary Baake alluded to that. The implication of keeping global temperature change well below 2 degrees is that in the next 5 decades, energy CO2 emissions need to fall close to zero. So that is a very fundamental transition. And we think that energy efficiency and renewable energy have a key role to play if we really want to achieve that objective. Apart from these high-level global objectives, there's also, let's say, the practical country priorities, and renewables can also help from that viewpoint. Renewable energy can create new jobs. There are globally nearly 10 million jobs in renewable energy. Our latest numbers on jobs will be released soon. And also, renewable energy is increasingly a sector that creates new economic activities. Renewable energy is in an increasing number of cases the cheapest energy option available, and it's also a very secure form of energy. More than 175 countries have renewable energy targets in place, and some have announced ambitions to reach 100% renewables in the not so distant future, and we'll hear a few of these cases later on today. Now, in terms of market trends, business case for renewables is still rapidly increasing. Costs continue to fall, and in 2015 we've seen renewable energy investments grow by another 22%, reaching around $300 billion. We have today worldwide around 2,000 gigawatts of installed renewable power generation capacity out of around 6,500 gigawatts worldwide. And these 2,000 gigawatts represent an increase of around 70% compared to 2009. Over the past 5 years, renewables have accounted for more than half of the installed new power generation capacity. So this is not a niche, this is today's mainstream development in the power sector. In 2015, the generation capacity increased by 152 gigawatts, an increase of 8.3% on the total renewables capacity. And that's the highest annual growth rate on record. The bulk of that growth is accounted for by solar and wind. So for solar, according to our statistics, we've seen 47 gigawatts were being added last year. For wind, around 64 gigawatts being added worldwide. Renewable energy today accounts globally for around a quarter of total electricity generation. And it's also worth highlighting that that growth is spreading globally. So the fastest growth in renewable energy generation capacity last year happened in developing countries. China, India have achieved remarkable progress and are scaling up renewable energy deployment in a way that was difficult to predict a few years ago. And other countries are joining, such as Morocco, Chile, and South Africa. We think that that growth can accelerate further. Our Remap 2030, which is our roadmap for what we see as potential development of the sector, it shows that renewable power generation technologies will continue to grow at unprecedented rate. The share of renewable power generation can increase from 23% in 2014 to 45% or more in 2030. And of course, that continues that trend then of renewables being the main capacity being added. In particular, wind and solar photovoltaics would increase from around 5% of the total today to more than 20% in 2030. And of course, that creates special technical, market, and organizational issues that need to be addressed. But what we see through the front runners is that these issues can indeed successfully be resolved. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's turn to the topic of innovation. Innovation and R&D have acquired significant prominence in the global efforts to combat climate change and scale up renewables. We've seen the launch of Mission Innovation and the Breakthrough Coalition at COP21. They bring together governments and private investors to substantially increase clean energy R&D investments. Mission Innovation aims for a doubling of the R&D budgets. Innovation has played a key role in the rapid and large-scale deployment of renewables. And as I just said, there is technological innovation, but also innovation in policy and market design, as well as in financing and business models. So innovation is more than just technology. As the share of renewable energy continues to grow, it will also require innovative ways to manage and govern our energy systems, to promote and deploy renewable energies, to finance their upfront cost, and to maximize their multiple benefits. As IRENA, we've been trying to assist our member countries in that process. We've done quite a lot of analysis in the area of innovation, in the area of R&D portfolios, etc. We've collected information on the latest information on renewable energy technology cost and today's cost, and also there's a new upcoming publication on what we see as the cost reduction potential in the coming decade, which we think is still very significant, also for solar and wind. And of course work on outlooks, technology outlooks, roadmaps, and resource availability. We've assessed how to adapt policies in this dynamic market and how to design national roadmaps to support power sector transformation. Through our clean energy corridors and the energy planning work, we've been examining opportunities that arise from connecting power systems across borders. So we're advising islands how to integrate much higher shares of renewable power and how to manage a transition process. And we've developed specific tools to address the potential of smart grids, grid extensions and storage, as well as our platform for renewable energy patents and standards, which is called Inspire. During the Innovation Week, we will launch a new study on the design of grid codes for variable renewable power integration. But the magnitude of challenges ahead, particularly in terms of power sector transformation, will require that we intensify and expand our innovation-related work. Ladies and gentlemen, finally a few words on the design of the program and the targeted outcome. Innovation Week centers on one central tenet, that innovations are the outcome of a number of factors working in tandem. The latest technology developments allow for new business models and operational approaches, while innovative regulatory frameworks and policies may trigger new technical and operational innovation. And when one of these elements stagnates, progress is halted. But when all these elements are enabled and streamlined, new opportunities are created, and they add value in the pursuit of sustainable development. In the next 3 days, our aim is to explore what the age of renewable power will look like in different countries around the world, how innovation is directing and enabling this energy transition, and how international cooperation efforts could strengthen the transition. For this purpose, we've brought together innovators working in 3 different fields. First, systemic innovators in policies, regulation, business models, and finance. Second, technological innovators in power generation technologies, grid storage and control systems. And third, operational innovators managing power flows in households, countries, and continents. We will hear from policymakers hailing from different countries how these innovations map on their realities in their own countries. Our ambition for the IRENA Innovation Week is twofold. First, from the IRENA's perspective, we hope to distill from these discussions the necessary input to create a global innovation agenda that advances both our work as well as that other international cooperation activities to advance innovation and support power sector transformation. And second, for you, I hope that the coming 3 days will unlock new ideas about the opportunities provided by the Age of Renewable Power to address any specific questions on the pathways to support this transition and to create a network that can be called upon to put this transition into practice. I wish you a fruitful and successful event. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dolph, for jumping in doing this. I invite you to come to the stage and perhaps answer a question or two. And Rainer Barke, if I can ask you to come on stage as well. Dolph, if we can leave the central seat to Rainer Barke, you sit there, I sit here. And we all have a microphone, which theoretically enables us to all speak at the same time, which we should try not to do. Dolph, perhaps as a follow-on, you working in IRENA, what are the questions, remarkable growth in the membership of countries joining IRENA and joining in the programs and becoming ever more engaged? From your perspective as the Director of Innovation Technology, what is the key interests that the member countries have, and what are the questions that they're asking IRENA?
It's a very interesting agency to work for because we have members that stretch from islands which have power systems in the order of magnitude of 10 to 100 megawatts to the size of the United States or China, which are power systems of more than 1,000 gigawatts. So that's quite many orders of magnitude. And clearly the issues are very different. So on the side of the smaller power systems, we are receiving a lot of questions because a lot of them are making very rapid progress in their energy transition. If they add a few megawatts, then that means a lot of percentage of renewables already. And so also these smaller power systems are often much more, technically much more challenging to manage in that respect. And so we're receiving a lot of questions around issues related to grid stability. We're also receiving questions on what the higher shares of renewables will in the end bring for the population, and an important parameter there is always what will it mean for the electricity price, for the consumer prices in the end. The questions in the larger, we see from the larger power systems are often more in the area of market design, in the area of very specific emerging technologies and what they can contribute, and questions around the economics of renewables and what potential there is for new emerging technologies.
It is lovely, Rainer Barke. Germany is sort of halfway between the big systems and the very small systems, perhaps slightly on the big side. But listening to this, it's the question of the cost, the prices of electricity for consumers, for industry, the grid stability, and how do you cope, how do you manage the change? With your experience and the German experience, what were the obstacles? What obstacles are still in the way? And what adaptations were necessary in order to address those issues that other countries are now struggling with?
Well, I would talk about different phases. The first phase was about between the year 2000, when we created our support scheme for renewables, and about 2014-15. That was the phase of bringing renewables into the market and cutting the costs. That's when we had feed-in tariffs. That was a very stable investment environment for those who wanted to try out new technologies. But these times are over now. We are faced with completely different challenges now. The renewables, as I mentioned before, are now the strongest source in our power system. So now it's also about economic efficiency. And we are only going to get this economic efficiencies if we use market mechanisms. That's difficult for a renewable branch that has been used now to the fact that prices are being decided in our parliament. But that cannot be the future. The renewables taking over now, of course, they have to be exposed to market mechanisms. So we're in the process right now of transforming to auctioning system, and I'm absolutely convinced they're going to work. What is equally important is the market that we create for the entire system, because we have now a very extremely decentralized system. There's probably not another country around that has more than 1.5 installations that generate electricity. 80 million customers, over 1.5 installations that generate electricity, from the small solar
million.
to the, pardon me?
1.5 million.
What did I say?
1.5.
Oh, 1.5 million, of course. 1.5.
Ladies and gentlemen, Germany has 1.5 million utilities because everybody has a panel on the roof is legally a utility.
And we're moving towards 2 million and maybe in the future even more. So such a decentralized system is only going to work if you have markets that coordinate supply and demand. So last year we had a big debate over the future of the market design, and we are right now in the process of deciding on this market design that we call 2.0, and what it means that we hold the energy traders accountable. They have to buy the electricity from renewable sources, buy it from conventional sources, buy demand-side management, buy storage capacities, form them into products and sell these products to customers. If you live in Germany, you can pick between about 200 or 300 different energy suppliers from which you can buy electricity. That is only working in one system if you hold every energy trader accountable for putting exactly the amount of kilowatt hours into the system as this energy trader is selling to customers. So those are the key challenges right now. They're not problems, they're challenges, and I'm sure we're going to meet them.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is an interesting discussion, because what Germany is trying to do here is obviously creating a market on the one hand for capacity expansion, and at the same time designing a market to meet the second-by-second balance of supply and demand on the electricity. It will be interesting to see how those two markets relate to one another. What's the thinking there in government?
Well, you see, as an economist, I look at the climate problem as external costs. Yeah? Somebody is allowed to use our atmosphere as a depository for CO2, and it's for free, almost for free. We have an emission trading system here now in Europe, but the prices are extremely low. If you look at the damage of a ton of CO2, it's about 100 to 200 euros per ton. Yeah? So if we would add these 100 or 200 euros per ton onto the bill of conventional generators that operate with fossil fuels, we would not have to worry about supporting renewables. But you all know this is not possible in a democracy, because you would drive certain industries right away out of your country or out of Europe. That is not possible. So we have to continue to work on improving the emission trading system, but for quite some time we still need some form of finance mechanisms for investments into renewable technologies. But that should not be decided by politicians. We cannot foresee what the right price is. We have to decide on volume, and the market should decide on prices. And on the other hand, then of course we need that market design that is working in a huge industrialized country that is trading electricity with all the European neighbors. So the debate that we're having here in Germany, we're also discussing this in Europe, because we have a single market, and we hope that what Germany agreed on with a lot of electricity neighbors, who I call the countries around us, with which we are in a very deep dialogue, maybe someday will also become European legislation. So those are actually the two key issues: bring the renewables into the market and make the market ready for high share of renewables, and create the infrastructure. And when I talk about infrastructure, I'm not only talking about grids. Grids is a very important part of that infrastructure, but another important element of infrastructure is the digitalization. Yeah? We have put a bill now before our parliament where we set standards, which is very important because that's what the business community cannot do. You need standards so that the different components can communicate. You need to decide on the issue of security of data. I know that rollouts of smart meter, for example, have failed in some countries because people didn't like that utility companies knew at what time in the evening they would watch TV or cook dinner. So security of data is very important, and of course you need a rollout strategy and do it in an economically feasible way. And I'm absolutely sure that a lot of new business models will arrive. We will see a lot of new forms of combining fluctuating renewables with battery capacity, with demand-side management, and create new products. And it is probably much more decentralized than we have the system even today, with 1.5 million generators and 80 million customers. There's more decentralization in the future.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. What you heard here is how the thinking about innovative market design, innovative regulatory innovation comes together with innovations in business models and in the technologies. Some of them are energy technologies, some of them, like smart grid, are enabling technologies. Right. So to you, Dolph, this is a discourse at the cutting edge of a country that sees itself as a pioneer. What are the questions that other countries have, and specifically where have you seen cutting-edge innovation in other countries that you like to see highlighted during this Innovation Week? Okay. And do hold it like ice cream.
The types of, well, if you ask what is best practice, it's often, sometimes it's on a country level, but often it's also on a more, on a higher granular level, at the level of states or at the level of individual municipalities. And a lot of the technical issues are at that higher level of granularity much more pertinent to deal with. At the level of a large country, it's mainly about how do you design the markets, while if you go to a more detailed level, then you need to go into much more detail. One of the topics where we receive a lot of questions, and I think where the jury is still a little bit out, is around the issue of battery storage. So it's clear that there is a lot of technological progress, that the costs are coming down very rapidly, that it's not only stationary batteries, but probably we're also going to see a lot of battery capacity in electric vehicles. And then the basic question starts, well, how will the consumer use that technology? For example, an electric vehicle. Will the consumer indeed recharge that vehicle at the time when the sun shines? Or will everybody plug in at 7 o'clock in the evening when they come home? And when the sun does maybe not shine? And that makes for the power system operators, of course, a big difference. And at this moment, we don't know yet exactly how that will work. And of course, policies can try to influence that behavior through pricing and maybe through other measures. But the rate of change we're seeing at this moment probably means that there will be a lot of practical experimenting instead of very careful long-term planning. Second observation is that the investments in the power sector are investments with a 40-50 year time horizon. And a policy cycle is typically 4 or 5 years. And how to how to match these two, how to ensure a policy consistency on the long term is in many constituencies also a very important factor, and that needs to be taken into account. And finally, of course, these changes are not happening in a vacuum. There is a certain starting point, and there is a certain path dependency in this development. And because the starting point is different and the resource endowment is different, also it's very likely that the outcome will be different for different systems.
Thank you very much. Behavior of consumers when they have batteries, and you mentioned that as well. What will happen? How quickly will the take-up be of batteries, specifically also with electric mobility being one of the areas where the German government wants to push it. But batteries are not the only storage technologies. Germany is also developing this power to gas and power to liquid idea of storing renewable energy for the day when it is dark and cold and the air is still. Rainer Barke, how do you see that developing in the future, the sector coupling and the storage?
Well, first of all, storage does not save any CO2 emissions. It's renewable energies that save CO2 emissions. So storage can be a technology that helps bringing more flexibility into a system that has the character of high shares fluctuating renewables from wind and solar. But it's not the only source of flexibility. You have different options. You have flexible generation, you have flexible demand response, you have storage, and if you are part of, for example, European single market, you also have the option of trading electricity with neighbors. Germany, for example, with Scandinavia, which has huge hydro capacities, or with the countries in the Alps, same situations there. So you have different options of flexibility. And what we feel is most important, that we as politicians create a stable market framework that these different flexibility options can compete, and the market then comes up with the most efficient solution. That's our philosophy. And the moment you decide, okay, I know better than the business community what flexibility is the best, and you start subsidizing, for example, batteries, well, the battery industry will be glad. But you ruin the business case of flexible demand response or flexible generation or trading cross-border with other countries. So it's sometimes difficult, but I tell my colleagues, please hands off from interfering in these markets. Let the market look for the most efficient solution. Of course, we have to create, of course, a stable framework and an intelligent framework. When I talk about markets, I'm not talking about laissez-faire, catch as catch can. That is not going to work. I'm talking about an intelligent market design that is necessary, so there is fair competition between these different options. That's our philosophy.
Great. That is not taking bets on any specific technology, but a lot of the innovation discourse is a technology discourse. It is about technologies. It is about materials, storage materials, or conversion of photovoltaics. The German government also invests a lot in the development of those technologies in terms of research and technological development.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I don't want to leave the impression that we don't want to push with also public money, new innovations. But I'm talking about then financing innovation, and I'm not talking about new subsidies on a permanent base as they are, for example, necessary to bring renewables off the ground. That is a completely different story. So these innovations we need, and I talked before about sector coupling. Decarbonizing the mobility sector, decarbonizing the sector of heating and cooling. And for that, most likely technologies like power to gas are going to play a key role. Yeah? Because that is part of the story that I was trying to say. The power sector is going to be key. The power sector, after all the efficiency measurements, the power sector is probably going to supply the energy that is also needed in the other sectors for decarbonization. And power to gas is one of the possible options there. That's why we have to develop these technologies, but at the end, then let the market compete over the most efficient solutions.
Great, thank you very much. And my last question also goes to Rainer Barke before I then hand over to Adnan Amin, who's arrived. Thank you very much for the German railways, French railways, Thalys probably, I don't know, to bring us here. Because what you say, Rainer Barke, is all very positive. Germany is a success story, and of course it is your role as a government official to sell a positive story. But we're here to learn, and sometimes it is much easier to learn from mistakes than from successes. So, looking back over the last 20 years or so, what were the mistakes? What went wrong? What would you tell other countries not to do?
Oh, that's a very difficult question, because we wasted in this country a lot of our energy on deciding what is actually the path we want to go. There were some people, and I mean, politics is always about interests, yeah? And there were some people who wanted to hold on to the old system of nuclear and fossil. And some of our big utility companies did that too long. They're now in serious economic problems. So I wish we could have just jumped from looking at climate challenge and other challenges and say, hey, let's decide on the transformation which we call energy transition in this Germany. But this is wishful thinking. In societies, things like that don't happen. So we had to have this battle. It took about 30 years, but now we have a consensus, and now we can concentrate on the questions, what is the best way of implementation? Yeah, it would be nice if other countries could jump over that phase. I personally believe it's not possible. Then, of course, also we made some, in this transformation, we made some expensive mistakes. There were some years where in this country the former government tried to adjust the feed-in tariff according to the falling prices of PV. And all of a sudden we had 7.5 gigawatts of solar installed in 1 year here in Germany at a time when solar was still very, very expensive, and we made commitments for 20 years. So those that were installed in 2020, we're going to pay for until 2030. Those were some pretty expensive mistakes. And the former government tried to find the brake slip to the gas pedal. Next year, again, 7.5 gigawatts, and a third year. That ran up a huge bill. On the one hand, that is a burden for the German consumers. On the other hand, of course, it was a blessing for the rest of the world, because this brought prices of PV down to a level now where almost everybody in the world can afford PV. So yes, there are a few things that we would like to avoid in the future. And when it comes to auctioning now, the transformation over to auctioning the necessary support for renewables, we of course also look to other countries. And because a lot of people have told us here, we have all these positive experience with feed-in tariffs. Why move to auctioning? Because there are so many examples how auctioning failed in other countries. Yes, it's true, we looked at that, but I think none of us is obliged to repeat the mistakes of others. And we can learn from each other, we can learn from the mistakes. You don't learn from the success stories. Most of the time you learn from the mistakes. So that's why an organization like IRENA is so important, because here we can exchange, we can learn from the good examples, and we can learn even more from the mistakes, and don't have to repeat what others already proved that it was wrong.
Thank you, Rainer Barke. I think that was the perfect final statement for this opening question and answer session. And I now hand over to Adnan Amin to invite his high-level panel members onto the stage. We'll have to rearrange a little bit here, but not too much. But let's thank Dolph, Gielen and Rainer Barke for being splendid keynote openers for this IRENA Innovation Week. Let's give them a big hand.